It's Dose Increase Day. I'm Wendy, functional nutritionist. That's my kitty in the background. And I have over 30 years of nursing experience. And for the past 4 weeks, I've been documenting my combining Ozempic with a metabolic balance protocol. Today, I'm increasing from 0.25 milligrams to zero point 0.5 milligrams. And I need to be honest with you. This past week was hard. The scale didn't move. The cravings came back strong. I questioned everything. Thank you, Minu. But then I looked at my blood analysis results. My cells told a completely different story. This is how I'm actually monitoring this journey. Not just symptoms, not just the scale, but cellular function through live blood analysis. By the end of this video, you'll understand why I chose this moment to increase despite the tough week, what my blood analysis revealed to that the scale didn't actually show, and my exact monitoring protocol for the next 4 weeks. The muscle loss risk nobody talks about. So let's dive in. Let me catch you up. 4 weeks ago, I started at 0.25 milligrams of Ozempic. Why? I'm a 58-year-old woman dealing with insulin resistance, inflammatory weight that won't budge, and metabolic dysfunction. That's conventional approaches haven't touched. What I've actually experienced so far and what I'm going to do is be brutally honest here. The food noise in week one, appetite was definitely suppressed. Food felt less urgent. That constant background hum quietened down a little bit, but by week two, that wore off completely. This past week, week four, the cravings came back strong. Not physical hunger so much because my belly was pretty much full, but the mental cravings. My body was satisfied, but my brain wanted ice cream, candy, salty snacks, all the things. My schedule was thrown off as well too, but that's what happens in life. And I gave in a few times. Side effects, practically none. One tiny moment of nausea back in the first week, I believe it was. Um, but nothing since, except for a little bit of constipation. But, if that's a little TMI, well, I'm sorry, but that's part of the process and that's what happens. Um, but this could be normal. It's hard to say. That's kind of my normal pattern anyways. Otherwise, nothing, which actually told me something important. This dose wasn't strong enough for me. The weight, well, the scale didn't move this past week, but I did lose 7 pounds over the last 4 weeks. But this could have been the metabolic balance. This could have been, just normal shifts in my weight. It could have been water weight. I'm not trusting it exactly. So I'm just going to be staying on top of it. I use an app called Zuzu Fit. With that scan, the body fat percentage actually came up 0.6% this last week. And my immediate thought, oh, I'm a failure. I can't even do this with medication. Those old insecurities surfaced and came back with a vengeance. Um, I thought to myself, why don't I have the control to white knuckle my way through this? I don't know. And then I had to remind myself, I'm doing this because white knuckling doesn't work. Simple as that. It was like an aha moment. That's literally why I'm here. My energy stayed pretty stable throughout, no major crashes. The protein strategy is working up front, and with my metabolic balance, having my actually, I brought it into it's supposed to be 3 meals a day, but I incorporated some intermittent fasting. So I'm starting my first meal around noon and then having my second fuller meal in the evening after 5 hours. But this was keeping things quite stable for me. But here's what matters most is that when it gets interesting, I did my live blood analysis before I started Ozempic, and then week 2, and again yesterday before the increase. And here's what I was actually revealing. So the live blood cellular morphology was improving. So less clumping, better shapes. And this is telling me that there's less oxidative stress happening. There's more oxygenation in my blood. There was less aggregation, so they're not sticking together like they were. And this is telling me better cellular metabolism. Um, my inflammatory markers were also decreasing. My cells were telling a completely different story than the scale. And the scale said, you're failing. My cells said, you're healing. Keep going. This told me that my cells were ready for the next phase, even though the scales didn't show what I wanted to see. And that's why I'm doing this publicly, because if all of you are looking at the scale, you miss the actual transformation that's happening at a cellular level. There's still transformation happening, even though it might not be showing up. Most people follow the standard titration schedule blindly. Okay, Minu. Usually it goes, unless you have a practitioner that's working with you on a regular basis and you have constant contact with that practitioner, usually you go 4 weeks at 0.25, so a quarter dose, 4 weeks at 0.5, half a dose, and then you increase to 1 milligram after that. I actually have a practitioner that I have constant contact with. I can message all the time. So, all these little questions that I have, I'm actually getting responses in real time, and they're keeping a very close monitoring effects of what's going on. Um, what this basically just tells me that keep going because it works. The cells don't care about what's going on the calendar. I actually questioned my practitioner, like I said, about increasing the dose sooner because in week 2, when my appetite suppression wore off, I was like, can we just bump it up now? I mean, I was very discouraged. I was very impatient and I just wanted to have results. I wanted to have those continued results. I wanted to have the feeling that it was actually working, but they discouraged it and they were right. Even though I wasn't feeling the dramatic effects, my body needed time to adjust at a cellular level. So I'm increasing today at, going into my week 5. My blood analysis showed cellular adaptation, and that was a big, big indicator for me. My cells have adjusted to the medication. They're processing glucose better. Inflammation is down. The foundation is getting solid again. There was no significant side effects to report throughout this process. So there was room to escalate. If a person has or were experiencing a lot of nausea, fatigue, or GI distress, then, that wouldn't be the time to be increasing the dose at that point. From my understanding, I'm not a practitioner, so don't take my word for it, but make sure that you are following practitioners' guidelines when it comes to your own journey. My body is tolerating the dose well, almost too well, in fact. So it was definitely time for me to titrate up. The Metabolic Balance Foundation is locked in. For 4 weeks, I've been eating according to my blood chemistry. My blood sugar has been stable. That's the foundation we're building on. The a couple of times that I caved into my own cravings, it, didn't quite hit me as hard as it would have normally about a month or so ago, but it did hit me. There was no two ways around that. So there's also a protein strategy that is actually dialed in, and I'm consistently hitting at least about 35 grams per meal. My cells are getting the amino acids that they need to maintain muscle mass, and that's probably one of my biggest fears beyond hair loss with regards to the symptoms, side effects of the medications. I don't want to lose that muscle mass because, going into my 60s, I need that. My appetite suppression at the 2.5 milligrams wore off. This is a big one. Week 1, it worked. Week 2 onwards, the food noise came back. That tells me that dose wasn't strong enough to override my baseline metabolic dysfunction. And now at that 5 week mark, I can actually up my dose, which is amazing. I'm actually looking forward to seeing how it works this week. It's precision medicine. And, you know, the whole idea about this is to be very gentle with the process, to see the ebbs and flows, to understand how the body is shifting during the process, and listening to your cells, not just the symptoms as well, too. So for the next 4 weeks at zero point 0.5 milligrams, here's exactly what I'm going to be monitoring and what I'm going to be looking for. So body composition. So not just exactly what's going on the scale, but my muscle versus fat ratio. I want to keep a close eye on that, especially because I am a postmenopausal woman and heading into my 60s. I want to maintain as much as I possibly can. I will be incorporating movement into my life as well too, which is not something that I typically would do, but this is going to be again part of this whole process, this shift, this transition that I'm going to be going through. I'm going to be monitoring my energy levels as well too, and patterns throughout the day. I'm going to be monitoring my sleep and quality as well too. At this point, I have a fairly good sleep. I get about 7 hours of uninterrupted sleep, and I count myself blessed because I know as a practitioner, many people come into my office and this is the top of their list of issues that they're dealing with. So definitely not taking it for granted by any means. When I'm tired, I sleep, and the more I sleep, the more I know my body is healing and rejuvenating and just going through a big process of cleansing out those toxins as well too, as I go through this whole journey. I'm going to be monitoring my mood and mental clarity and the food noise and appetite changes, cravings, both intensity and frequency. And every 2 weeks, I'm going to check my blood, do a little finger prick, put it under my microscope and take a look and see what's going on. I'm going to be looking at my protein utilization markers, my cellular inflammation, red blood cell health, and morphology. And on a monthly basis, a comprehensive metabolic panel. So I'm going to try to look at my labs. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to be able to or not, just simply because I don't have access to requisition all the time. And within my scope, I don't have that authority to be able to run the labs. And I don't want to put the extra money out just to see what my fasting glucose is or my lipid panel. At the end of the process, I will be checking on that. But here's what I'm going to be watching most carefully. Again, muscle loss. New research actually shows 15 to 40% of weight loss on people using GLP-1s can be due to muscle loss or muscle mass loss. So let me say that again, up to 40% muscle. Women over 40, that's catastrophic. Sarcopenia, which is the technical term for muscle loss, age-related muscle loss, actually leads to bone density loss, metabolic slowdown that makes it harder to maintain weight long term. So it actually leads to frailty, loss of independence. And this is the complete opposite of what I'm trying to do with this whole process. I'm trying to increase my longevity by bringing some foundational work into my metabolic health and also lose that weight. But I don't want to lose that muscle mass. I refuse to trade weight loss for muscle loss. I refuse to sacrifice my long-term health for short-term scale victories. Again, the scale is not the most important thing at this point. It's my metabolic health and my muscle protection strategy is going to be imperative. I'm going to increase my protein and maintain that protein increase throughout this whole process and throughout my whole life. This is a journey which I'm not going to be shifting once I get to a certain goal weight. This is a journey that's going to be ongoing. And that high quality protein per meal is going to be a non-negotiable for me, even if I'm not hungry. The thing is, I'm also seen as a nutritionist. I know that, with age, with stress, with medications, with ongoing life, everything causes a lot of people to have a lower stomach acid. And proteins get digested in the stomach. So if you don't have the stomach acid, you're not going to be able to digest the proteins effectively and be able to get the amino acids that are needed for that foundational structure and building of everything, including muscle in your body. So, if you look back into a couple of my posts, you can see that I've actually incorporated a digestive enzyme and some HCl into my regime of supplements just to ensure that I'm going to be breaking down the proteins as much as possible. I'm going to be incorporating resistance training at least 3 times a week and gradually increasing that over time just to bring in those gentle movements that really, really count. Also incorporating walking, which is going to be another gentle process that I'm going to be incorporating. Looking at the simple fact that menopausal women need to have more gentle exercise routines and not the crazy cardio and bodybuilding that we may have done 20, 30 years ago. So, like I said, I'm not really trying to become a bodybuilder. I'm just trying to keep the muscle that I do have. And unfortunately, at almost 60, I've already kind of noticed some muscle mass loss. So I want to ensure that I continue maintaining what I have, but also increasing it as well too. I'm going to continue live blood monitoring, showing protein utilization, so I can actually see if my cells are breaking down muscle for fuel. Amino acid supplementation as needed based on what my blood is actually showing. So, I may throw in some essential amino acids, not the BCAAs, but the EAAs into my blood. So this is, according to what's his name, Gary Brecka, I think. He's the one that really talks about all the essential amino acids for that as well too. So as I'm doing the resistance training, I'm going to be breaking down muscle, but I want it to be rebuilt up from there as well too. And this is, and why I'm actually doing this publicly is because nobody actually talks about the cellular level, talks about what's happening down below. They talk about scale numbers and side effects, and they talk about, "Oh, I've lost 20 pounds in 2 months," but they don't talk about losing 8 pounds of muscle in that process. Your cells really tell the real story, and I'm documenting mine. So, what am I expecting this week? Well, a little voice in my head is telling me, you're going to be nauseated. You're going to be, mm, yeah, I think I'm worried about the nausea. I'm actually a little bit worried about hair loss as well, too. I have very thin hair and I'm kind of preparing that by actually adding in a few things, a few supplements, and protocols for my hair care. But that's a lot of vanity going on there. But last week taught me something really important. At 2.5 milligrams, the appetite suppression I felt in 1 week completely disappeared in week 2. So understanding that my cravings are really mental and not physical. My body was full, but my brain was screaming for sweets. That was powerful for me to bring that understanding into the fact that I have to dive a little bit deeper, to be honest, about what's going on in my head and understanding what's going on with that. And, I'm kind of hoping that the food noise will quieten down so I can explore that a little bit further in real time. And when the scale doesn't move next week or this week or any time during this journey, that, those old insecurities, they come up super fast. And understanding or wondering why I just don't have the control to resist. This is part of the process of understanding myself a little bit better. Um, Understanding that I'm not weak, that maybe I'm just one of those people that, this mental chatter is louder than the medication itself. I just have to remember that I'm doing this because control and willpower haven't worked in the past for me. And that's literally the point. I have done it all. I have tried everything out there, and I still have this goal that I need to continue. Um, I need to do this for my health, for my heart, for my metabolic future, for my insulin resistance, for to deter the risk factors of metabolic syndrome. I don't want to have a diagnosis in a couple of years. This is my preventative structured plan to ensure that I don't get those diagnoses in a few years of diabetes, that I ensure that I don't get a diagnosis of heart disease or heart failure, to ensure that I don't get a diagnosis of cancer. Metabolically foundational health issues are rampant in our society, and it scares me. And coming into 60, it scares me a lot, especially because I have been monitoring my own labs and my own blood for years now, and I can see those numbers creeping up. I've done everything naturally that I could think of for my blood pressure, and it still didn't come down. Um, so I went on medication. I'm just doing the same thing at this point. I have done everything that I could possibly do with regards to, bringing my weight down and reducing my risk factors for metabolic disorders. Nothing worked. So I'm combining the Ozempic with the Metabolic Balance program to be able to bring in that foundational work that I need, as well as ensure that I can eventually come off of the medication as well. But that's my personal journey. Everybody's going to be a little bit different for my metabolic future and for my health. And honestly, everybody that's watching now, potentially this is kind of the same story that everybody's going through. It is an important story that I know had to be talked about, and that's why I wanted to be very public about it. I'm not here to invite haters or look like a failure either. But maybe, showing my real life story, showing my ups and my downs and exactly what's happening might be something that you need or somebody that you know might need. This is the messy middle, the week where nothing moves, the cravings that didn't magically disappear, and the process of how I'm going through this. So this week, I'm up to half dose. And realistically, probably there's going to be minimal change. It takes time for the medication to reach a steady state in my system, anybody's system. Um, there might be some food noise reduction, but typically, again, it might not kick in, or it might kick in this week a little bit more, but it may not last again. I'm kind of expecting that constant background hunger is going to quiet down a little bit, but we'll see. Possible side effects that I'm preparing for, a little bit more nausea, and I'll manage that with ginger and small meals and eating protein first. I'm expecting a little bit more constipation maybe, but I take magnesium regularly and I increase my fiber. I have oatmeal every day according to my metabolic balance program, and I put psyllium husks in there. I have a prescribed amount of water through my program, which is nearly 3 liters. And, the more I deal with that at that level, the less constipation that I'm going to have to deal with. Fatigue, well, this is going to be helped with protein at every meal to really help support my cellular function. The decreased appetite, well, finally, this is kind of what I'm looking for. But again, strategically keeping lower amounts on my plate, using smaller plates so I'm not overwhelmed by the fact that, oh my God, I have to eat all this in my plan. or, just having a little bit of variety in all of this. And what I'm hoping for really is significant appetite reduction that actually lasts throughout the whole process. That way I kind of know that it's working, so I can keep that mental chatter down a little bit. I'm hoping so for some mental clarity with less food obsession, continued inflammatory reduction at the cellular level, stable energy, which has been pretty good so far. That metabolic piece where I'm not constantly thinking about food, and which is really ironic and a little strange to think because I am a nutritionist, I'm always thinking about food anyways, but it just is part of that process of my own intake. But here's my commitment to you. I'm going to show it all to you, all of it. Not the Instagram highlight reel. I'm not an influencer by any means. Not the I lost 10 pounds, look at me version. The real version. The is it normal version. The here's what I'm struggling with version. The day 5 and I feel like garbage version, if that happens. And because that's what's actually going to help you. That's the content that makes you feel less alone in this process because this medication is all over the place now. And I know I'm not the only one that's struggling or dealing with these kinds of issues. So here's why I'm combining Ozempic and metabolic balance instead of just taking the medication and hoping for the best. Ozempic actually addresses one piece of the puzzle, the GLP-1 signaling. It slows gastric emptying, which causes the constipation. It actually affects the receptors in your brain and your gut, and it reduces appetite. But metabolic dysfunction has multiple root causes. And that's what I do for a living, is really investigate those root causes. Insulin resistance, chronic inflammation, cellular glucose metabolism dysfunction, mitochondrial stress, nutrient deficiencies, hormonal imbalances. And even all of those, they have their root as well too. I'm always asking why. Why is there chronic inflammation? Why is there mitochondrial stress? Why is there nutrient deficiencies? Why is there hormonal imbalances? Why? Metabolic balance actually addresses all of these through their personalized nutrition based on your specific blood chemistry. This isn't generic meal plans. It's about eating more protein and vegetables. This is your cells processing carbohydrates differently than hers. This is about your protein needs are specific to your metabolic markers. These 10 food triggers inflammation in your body, and not everyone's, just yours. So understanding that I can't eat dairy, but maybe you can. Your metabolic program will show that you have dairy or a specific kind of dairy. My program shows that I should only be eating goat's dairy and sheep's dairy. But this is my program. So this is the program that I'm following. That's the foundation. The medication works better when your cells are functioning optimally, when your mitochondrial are supported, when inflammation is managed, when your insulin receptors are healing. I'm not just quieting the food noise with medication. I'm fixing why the noise was there in the first place. And I'm proving that this works in real time with my own body, with my own cells, with complete transparency. So, just to close this off right now, if you're on this journey too, or you're considering it, here's what I want you and need you to know. You deserve more than symptom management. You deserve root cause answers. You deserve to understand what's happening at the cellular level, not just what the scale says. That hard week I just had where the scale didn't move and I questioned everything, my sanity, my eating intake, the why I was even doing this. It's normal. It's part of the process. And if you're experiencing that right now, you're not failing. Your body is adjusting. Your cells are healing. Keep going, okay? I'm telling that to myself. I've got little sticky notes all over my house. Keep going. That's what I'm here for, to show you it's not just you, to show you the real journey, to help you understand your body at the cellular level. Links to everything below. Come and hang out with me. Like and subscribe to the channel. I do have things like free blood sugar breakthrough challenges to stabilize your blood sugar, booking some discovery calls to talk more about metabolic balance if that's something you might be interested in. I also have a community called the Kitchen Table where um, we are just living this, all of us, all at the same time. And I'm also looking and booking for live blood analysis. So have a wonderful day. And, you know, thank you for being here and watching this messy middle. Um, Keep your comments kind, and thanks for caring more than just about the scale. That's what's going to change everything.